Look, I don't care what anyone says. Spiritual baths change lives. Spiritual baths have changed my life so many times, and they continue to do it every single time I take one. Every time I take an intentional spiritual bath, I have so many realizations. My mood, it always gets improved after a spiritual bath. I have so much more clarity after a spiritual bath. My intuition, my psychic abilities, they always come through stronger after a spiritual bath. And, sometimes it can be a hassle to plan out what herbs you want to use and make sure that the bathroom is clean physically, energetically. But, as much planning as it takes, a lot of the best stuff that we really need, it takes planning, right? As long as you're putting in that good intention, it will make such a difference in your life. And so good news, the Spiritual Bath ebook is officially dropping July 17th, okay, this month. 7/17, you'll be able to get your hands on it on my website. It'll be in the product tab. I'm going to be answering a bunch of your frequently asked questions about spiritual baths in the book. I will give you alternatives to spiritual baths if you don't have a bathtub, if you're not able to take a spiritual bath. But those are going to be alternatives that are still very potent and that will get your energy together. I'm also giving step-by-step directions, of course. I'm going to give you 9 of my very powerful, tried, true spiritual bath recipes and some other tips about spiritual bathing and other types of energy hygiene, spiritual maintenance. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back, y'all, to Cosmosis or Whatever with me, your host, Celia Marie 1243, Celia the Spirit Guide Whisperer. I am your favorite tarot reader and energy healer, spiritual mentor, and you are here because you're invested in the spiritual side of things, healing, improving yourself. I'm here to help create safe spaces for us so that we can explore our healing journey, the spiritual realm, our intuition, psychic abilities. It's all connected. And that is the meaning of Cosmosis and why the podcast is named Cosmosis or Whatever. In today's episode, it is inspired by a trip out of town that I just went on. And we know how traveling can be. For me, I'm a homebody. I do all of my readings from home, and all of my other work is done from home as well. So when I have to go outside, when I have to be around other people more than I'm used to, that can be extremely draining for me. So especially when I'm traveling, like around family, that can be a lot. But of course, there are some spiritual maintenance and energy hygiene kind things that we can do to help ease some of that before, during, and after we get back from traveling. So I will be sharing what that looks like for me, along with some other helpful suggestions that you guys can use before, after, and during travel. So before I left for my trip, I was honestly not in a great space energetically. I was due for a spiritual bath, for real. I try my best to align my spiritual baths with the new moons and the full moons because I can feel how heightened my energy is during that time. So it's a really great time for me and my magic and my rituals. And that's actually why I named my business Moon Glow in the first place, is because of my connection to the moon since I was really young, and then understanding that it represents intuition, all that. So the full moon ended up being smack dab in the middle of our trip. And I was like, okay, I'll just take one when I get back home. But before I left, I did a short version of a spiritual shower. I didn't take a spiritual shower. I did a shortcut of a spiritual shower. Spiritual showers can be very potent, but this was honestly kind of a lazy version of it. If I'm being honest, I didn't put all the intention into it that I could have, but it worked for what it was. I can just tell the difference though when I take a spiritual bath or an actual spiritual shower versus what I did. It was a shortcut, but I can feel when I take those spiritual baths, because when I took one, when I got back, I felt so much lighter. My mind was clear. My abilities felt clearer. I feel like a lot of things just started to fall into place, things that I had been worried about, business stuff that I couldn't figure out. I was having a lot of anxiety about things. I was overthinking. In fact, I was overthinking while I was designing the spiritual bath ebook. Okay, is that ironic? A little bit. But I actually took one of the baths that was in the ebook, and afterwards I felt so much better. I felt like free is a good way to describe it. It was one of the really simple baths. Most of them are really simple in that book. 3 ingredients, it'll be included. I felt so much better. So what can we do though before traveling for our spiritual hygiene, our energy maintenance, and Costa Rica crew, those who are joining us on the spiritual retreat, Earth Medicine, Costa Rica 2024 in October? I'm looking at y'all. Okay, these are some great things that you guys can do before we head out on the trip. And for anybody who still wants to join, there is still time, but it's running out. There are still spots, but they're running out. You can check the show description for the link. And then of course, this is for everybody else who, when we're traveling as well, but I wanted to shout out my Costa Rica peeps, my Costa Rica crew. So before traveling is going to be a great time to, of course, do a cleanse of your room and or your house. I don't know about you guys, but I picture my apartment as being as a being. Like I picture it with eyes and a soul. Like, I don't know if anybody else talks to their house. I would highly recommend it. By the way, you can get a really good energy read off of your house and how the energy is, just by talking to it and picturing it as almost like a person. I picture it with eyes and a soul. And so when I leave, I kind of picture it just sitting there and kind of missing us while we're gone. I don't know if anybody else sees theirs like that, but I do. And why not spruce it up a little bit, right? Just like, you give your pet treats before you go away. You try and do things before you go away on a trip. That way the energy isn't like kind of stagnant and weird either when you get back, and it'll set the stage for all of your other spiritual maintenance. Okay, coming home to a clean house after a trip is absolutely unmatched. You can do all your decompressing and spiritual maintenance and stuff. So some specific things I recommend: a good floor wash. A good floor wash will really get it together. After you have swept the whole floor, you're going to want to take a bucket of hot water. You add some Florida water to that till the ancestors say stop. Like, don't get crazy about, the amounts. But it doesn't have to be a whole lot. I also really love pine sol for floor washes. Pine is really great for bringing in abundance as well as protection, banishing. Okay, sound familiar? I actually did a podcast episode on banishing, cleansing, and protection. And I think I might have brought up that floor wash as well. I also really love for floor washes the antibacterial Fabuloso, and it's also purple. So I use color magic to kind of set my intentions as well. And pro tip for everybody who is going to have the spiritual bath recipe ebook, or if you already have some good spiritual bath recipes, a lot of spiritual bath recipes are going to work the same way to set intentions in your space as a floor wash or a door wash. Okay. Yeah. Pro tip. So, just mopping. I like to go from back to the front door, and just thinking about my intentions will change the energy in your house completely. Obviously, if you want to do some other type of cleaning before that, but a floor wash after you sweep, that'll get things thinging. Okay. So other things you can do: smoke cleansing, of course. My favorites, I really love dragon's blood to cleanse. Frankincense is a really good one. Myrrh is also really good for cleansing, protection, kind of like wrapping those up together. And depending on your intention, but of course, those are all just great for general cleansing things. Something else you can, should, and keep in mind, you guys, when I say should during any of these things, like any advice that I ever give anybody, always check in with your intuition and what makes sense for you and what works for you. When I give advice on spiritual things to do, it's never telling you like, oh, well, you're not going to be okay if you don't do this, or if you do it my way, that's the only way. That's not how I operate at all, because it's not true. Different strokes for different folks, right? But these are just things that I know have worked for me or have worked for clients, and you can choose what feels right for you according to how much energy you have, according to what makes sense for you, according to what you have. So keep that in mind, right? So if you don't have an ancestor altar, don't worry about this one, but I will give a bunch of different recommendations. So refreshing your ancestor altar or any type of altars that you have around your house. So refreshing your water. I did do that before I left. You can put down some non-perishable offerings. I've been doing a lot of like pastries and cakes and things as offerings lately, but I will just leave them in their packaging. Like I will go get like a whole like cinnamon roll or like a cake, and I excuse me, I will just leave it in the packaging itself and leave it as an offering. That way, if by any chance little buggies get into your house or whatever, then it's nice and covered, and it's still an offering that your ancestors can get the energy from. You also might want to cleanse your whole altar. I like to cleanse with Florida water, or whatever other cleansing waters and things that you have. You can also sit at your altar and set intentions with your ancestors or just in general for how you want your trip to go. Say a quick prayer, set some intentions. You can write things out, things to look out for. Those types of things are really good to do before you go on a trip. If you want to set intentions, I've done this before. Actually, did I do this before my last trip? I think I did. You can set intentions for like clear communication while you're on your trip, to, be aware of anybody's energy who isn't really sitting right that you need to stay away from. Like you can do those types of things before you leave too. Of course, a good spiritual bath, right? Jump in there, a good spiritual bath for whatever. In the spiritual bath ebook, I'm going to have spiritual baths, a couple for, cleansing and road opening. And then I'm going to have one for each of the chakras, which will be really good for some nice like alignment and whatever intentions you're setting. Some other things you can do before your trip: protection. You can do protection spells on your luggage, on your cars, anything that you're using to travel. In your shoes, that's a really good one. If you want to put the word protection over a bay leaf and just put it in your shoes, okay, that's a good protection thing. If you want to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon in your shoes, that can also work for money or protection, depending on, whatever your intentions are. If you're bringing any tarot cards and things with you, you could put protections on those. Your debit cards, credit cards, wallets, you can do. I was just talking about that with somebody in a personal reading today, about protecting, a wallet before going on a trip, right? Protecting your money. You can also do color magic with your outfits, right? So depending on what your intentions are for the trip, you can choose different colors that align with different chakras or whatever your intentions are, right? You've heard me say intention a million times already, because intention has so much to do with magic. If you haven't listened to the episode talking about how intention really changes things, please go listen to that, because it's very helpful. I also give a bunch of different tips on how to be practical but very intentional with things that you do. It'll help. Charging any tools. So any of your bracelets that you want to bring, if you have crystal bracelets or other jewelry, you can charge those things. I like to leave mine on a selenite plate, a couple days maybe before the trip, and then grab them before I go. You can also charge any of your other tools, any of your other crystals that you'll be wearing. You can enchant your jewelry, your tarot decks, like I was talking about earlier. Those are all really great things that you can do before you go on a trip. So during your trip, you can, of course, do meditation or, whatever kind of suits you, but maybe you have like a grounding practice that you do, a quick little prayer that you say in your head. Make sure that you do those things on your trips as well. You can set intentions with your crystals. You can go on nature walks, right? If you plan on being in a place that has like maybe a trail next to it or something like that. Go on your morning walks just to get your energy kind of realigned for yourself. That is always helpful. Also kind of creating space for communication. If you are going as a couple or as a family that is traveling with another family, hopefully that makes sense. Like, for example, my girlfriend and I, we were traveling with her family, and it wasn't something that we necessarily planned out, but it was something that happened. We ended up kind of just breaking off from the group, not during anything important, but like at the end of the day, when everybody's winding down, we actually just went and got some food together, and we were kind of just debriefing. We were letting it all out, and that was really, really helpful for our trip. It kind of gave us a sense to just reset, right? Talk to each other. Again, being around family, especially if you're not around them all the time, or even if you are around them all the time, it can be kind of daunting. And then if you don't have a chance to say the things that you need to say, or, those things can fester. So it's good to create that space ahead of time if you know that's something that you need as well. That is great energy hygiene, great spiritual maintenance. If you need to bring your journal with you during that, if you don't have somebody that you can create that space to talk to, create your space to do some journaling in the morning. Wake up a little bit earlier than you need to, or have a little reading light with you where you can journal. You can even journal in your notes app. You don't have to bring a journal if it doesn't suit you, right? You can also bring, your cards, or you can work with the energy, your spirit guides, and do readings for yourself on, what energy you need for the day, for the week, for the whole trip. And you can do that before you leave as well. But if you're, on the trip and you want to do that, that can be helpful sometimes. If maybe something isn't going the way you expected, or the energy feels weird, doing a reading can always help if you're a reading person, During the trip, making sure that you are setting boundaries. Of course, our boundaries are part of our spiritual hygiene, very much. So that can also tie into things that you do beforehand. What types of boundaries will you set? And sometimes that boundaries, you don't really know exactly what your boundaries might be until somebody's stepping close to one. So keeping that in mind before and after, what are your boundaries going to be? Like if you have kids, for example, okay, I don't want my kid hugging any people who aren't family members, or maybe, your kids are only supposed to watch a certain amount of TV. Those are things that you're going to want to think about, set boundaries with. Think about that before and after you take your trips, before you travel. Some people, especially if you're taking a longer trip, maybe 2 weeks or longer, you might want to take a travel altar with you. Now, if you don't have a regular altar, a travel altar, you might not necessarily want to take one, but keep in mind that you are your first altar. So it doesn't have to be fancy, but you can also just take things that connect you with your spirit guides, like we talked about earlier. There could be certain crystals. There could be a picture of maybe a saint that you're working with, a deity, Maybe just something, if you don't want to be so obvious, just something small, a little crystal. It could even be a coin that is your thing between you and your spirit guides. Your spiritual journey, if you're still in the broom closet or something like that, like your spiritual journey doesn't have to be so out loud and proud. It always has to be proud. It doesn't have to be, but it should be. But there are very discreet ways that you can still go about doing those things, even if your family or whoever you're traveling with isn't super like spiritual the way that you are. Like I know for me, a lot of my family, well, I don't really care. I just bring my crystals. I got them in my bra. I'm wearing them, as bracelets, and that's always like the gifts and stuff that I give people. But I know not everybody's family or people that you may be traveling with are like that. And then you can also get souvenirs while you're on your trip for your ancestors, angels, spirit guides. Even if you don't have an altar, you can just make sure that you put it in an energetically cleansed space, hit it with some Florida water, smoke cleanse, whatever, and then just set the things down in somewhere where it won't be disturbed. Ancestors, angels, spirit guides love stuff like that, especially if you're doing like a pilgrimage. Or keep in mind that you could dedicate your whole trip to your spirit guides, depending on what you're doing for the trip. So maybe you are going on vacation to Mexico, and maybe you have, Mexican heritage. Or even if you don't, maybe if you have spirit guides or ancestors who have always wanted to visit Mexico, that is something that you can be like, okay, this is dedicated to you. We're going together. Those are really sweet things that you can do as part of your spiritual maintenance. And if you have a hard time, if you don't know what that is or how to go about that, lucky for you, you have a spirit guide whisperer. Hello, right here. So if you guys need help with any of that, feel free to book a reading. I'm willing to do that kind of stuff. I love things that maybe don't fit necessarily into the boxes of, the readings that I have outlined, but y'all know I love to help. So I can definitely help you figure out if there's something that your spirit guides want as an offering. If there's something that you can do during your trip, if there's something you can bring back, if you aren't super confident in your ability to communicate with your ancestors or spirit guides just yet, I can definitely do stuff like that. Or give you a reading for your trip overall before you go. On the Costa Rica trip, I will probably be doing readings before and after the trip, just to give us some sense of what we should be looking out for, lessons to learn, things like that. Okay, and then so for after the trip, of course, spiritual bath. Again, you could take spiritual baths, do your cleansings, do cleansing on all of your clothes and things that have been around other people, especially. Okay, if you want to go ahead and revisit your altar, let your spirit guides know how your trip went. They come with you where you go, but the altar is that portal for really opening things up. To speak to them, no matter what that looks like. It could just be your bed. It could be a spot on your floor, whatever that is for you. Revisit that place and kind of just take some time. Also, journaling, decompressing, thinking about things, reflecting on what you've learned, what happened during the trip. Was it a great trip? Could it have been a little bit better? Could you have set better boundaries? Could you have communicated more clearly? Things like that for after your trip. And then, of course, making sure that you're getting rest. When you are out there in the world, especially if you're a homebody like me, you're used to your own germs and your own house. And when you get out there around people, traveling is exhausting as it is, but, there could be a lot of stuff going on. So make sure that you rest. I always like to take a bunch of vitamin C if I'm feeling sick at all or a tickle in my throat. I make sure that I also have like hand sanitizer and stuff with me on my trips. Those things are always good. And then you can kind of meditate. and reflect and just allow yourself to really decompress from your trip. That is all part of energy maintenance. It doesn't have to be some fancy woo-woo thing. So keep that in mind. There are a bunch of things that you could do before, during, and after travel that I probably didn't even mention. And maybe I will throw some more on like Instagram, a reel or something if I think of it. But these are all great things that you can do. So keep them in mind the next time that you travel for a long time, a short time, even if you're just going over somebody's house. These are all things that you can do before, during, and after. I hope this was helpful. I'm really excited to release this spiritual bath ebook. There's so much love that has gone into it, so much work, energy, and I hope you guys can feel it when you take the baths, when you're reading. You can feel the energy around it. So I'm excited. July 17th, 7/17. We'll have another podcast episode before then, but I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.